A little bit ago, we put out a video about Black Widow that you guys really seem to like. A 10-minute deep dive into one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's veteran heroes that is able to hold her own against some of the most powerful characters ever? Yeah, you dug it. And the fact that it was an excuse to look at Scarlett Johansson for a few minutes probably didn't hurt. And many of you asked that we in turn give some time to her other half, Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye. Well, guess what? That is exactly what we're gonna do right about now. Let's start this video off the same way that we always start these Powers Explained videos, by taking a look at the character's origins. Note that, like Black Widow, we're going to be talking about the MCU version of the character, so things here won't line up with any of his comic origins perfectly. Some things might be mirrored, but nothing will fit exactly. And note that there is a chance that Hawkeye might make an appearance in the Black Widow solo film, so some of this might change, as most of this origin comes from either offhanded comments or the MCU Prelude comics. So basically what I'm saying is, if you're watching this in the future, take this part with a grain of salt. Clinton Francis Barton was born in a small town in Iowa, specifically Waverly, Iowa. His childhood was pretty standard, right up until he dropped out of high school. At some point early in his life, he developed an aptitude for archery, quickly becoming renowned as the quote-unquote greatest living marksman on the planet. He went around for a little while, probably doing sweet archery trick shots or something, I don't know, until he met a woman named Laura, who he fell in love with and married, moving into a farmhouse with her and having a couple of kids. Nick Fury, director of the super spy organization S.H.I.E.L.D., learned about Barton and hand-selected him for recruitment, due not only to his marksmanship abilities, but also a few other skills that we'll get to soon, and his moral code that often pushed him to do the right thing, whether or not it conflicted with orders or the wishes of those with authority over him. You would naturally think that the director of an intelligence organization would want people who follow orders, but I guess that's not really Fury's style. He worked for the agency for a little while, eventually becoming one of their top agents. Yet all that time, Barton worked hard to keep Laura and his family secret from S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to keep them as safe as possible, even to the point that he had Fury keep them out of his files, meaning that only Fury was aware of their existence. At some point around this time, Barton was nearly assassinated by a Hydra agent named Marcus Scarlatti, who became renowned for how close he got to taking Hawkeye out. Imagine that for a second, being so freaking good as an agent that someone else makes a name for themselves by almost killing you. That had to have been an ego boost for Barton. At one point, a Russian assassin and spy codenamed Black Widow started to appear more and more on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s radar, becoming a genuine threat to global security. You should probably know what happens after this, as we literally put out a video explaining all of this from Black Widow's perspective, which I highly recommend that you go watch if you haven't already. But in case you don't want to watch that, probably just to spite me, here we go. Fury tasked Barton with locating and taking Black Widow out permanently. After a while, he managed to track her down and confront her. However, after seeing what she was capable of firsthand and learning a bit more about her, Barton made the decision to, instead of putting an arrow between her eyes, recruit her for S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury wasn't initially happy with this idea, but it didn't take much to convince him, and Black Widow, real name Natasha Romanoff, was able to successfully defect and join the organization. The two of them were assigned to work together and became S.H.I.E.L.D. Strike Team Delta. They were tasked with carrying out missions all over the world, including places such as the Ivory Coast and Budapest. Over the intervening years, Barton and Romanoff grew quite close, to the point that Romanoff shared with him details of her past, specifically her experiences in the Red Room facility. Again, watch the Black Widow video for that stuff. And Barton in turn introduced her to Laura and his family, making her only the second person within S.H.I.E.L.D. who actually knew about them. Barton was eventually told by Fury to head on down to New Mexico to help with an investigation into an odd object that had crashed to Earth from parts beyond. And that is where the MCU proper picks up Barton's story, as he debuted in 2011's Thor. Yeah, do you remember that? He was in Thor for about 2 minutes, but it still counts as his debut. He then went on to appear in 2012's The Avengers, 2015's Age of Ultron, and 2016's Captain America Civil War. He'll also pop up in this year's Avengers Endgame, where he's gonna be rocking a sweet new haircut and a less than sunny disposition. Anyways, let's now head on to his skills and equipment, since he doesn't have any actual powers, just being a regular dude. A highly skilled dude, but still. You see, Barton is more than just a skilled archer and marksman, though it is worth emphasizing just how freaking good he is at shooting stuff. He isn't called the greatest living marksman on the planet for nothing, as seen in basically every single one of his performances in the films, hitting pretty much everything that he shoots at with ease, whether they're flying or running or whatever. But yeah, he's more than just a good shot. He's also a master assassin, being able to stealthily track down and eliminate targets, which, yeah, is sort of a no-brainer given his profession. So what else do we got? How about the fact that he's a master acrobat? Not something you were thinking of, huh? He is extremely agile and quick on his feet, able to execute difficult and rather fancy moves, such as jumping over a car while firing an arrow at an Ultron Murderbot Sentry thing, and dodging a blast from War Machine during the Clash of the Avengers. Side note, did you know that the airport battle has an official name? Yeah, it's not just the airport battle, it's the Clash of the Avengers. Sounds pretty swanky. In addition to being able to do sweet flips and stuff, Barton is also a master of several forms of martial arts, having received extensive amounts of training during his time as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. In fact, his S.H.I.E.L.D. training even puts him on par with his best buddy Black Widow, who spent her entire life training in the Red Room. Seriously, he nearly had her on the ropes during their fight on the helicarrier in 2012's The Avengers, and was doing a pretty good job against her at the airport, despite apparently pulling his punches. He also did pretty good against Black Panther as well, so there's that. S.H.I.E.L.D. also provided him with some training covering expert-level tactical maneuvers. While he might not be the same sort of strategic mind as someone like Captain America, Barton is a pretty smart cookie in this regard, as seen when he was able to efficiently and effectively lead a small squad of soldiers to infiltrate both a German vault and the helicarrier itself while brainwashed by Loki. I mean, I guess you could argue that Loki had something to do with how well he was able to execute those two missions, but we're just gonna let Barton have this one, as nothing we've seen from him makes us think anything less about him. Barton is also a pretty good pilot. In fact, he might be the best one in the entire Avengers roster. Not only can he fly the Quinjet, he can also successfully execute some pretty fancy moves, such as when he managed to catch Vision's coffin thing in midair during Age of Ultron. Not sure that anyone else could do that. Oh, and he is multilingual, able to speak English, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic, because he wouldn't have been a very effective global agent if he couldn't speak at least a couple different languages. He also would have had some issues as an agent if he didn't have an arsenal of cool gadgets and weapons. Absolutely nailing these transitions. Starting things off, we of course need to talk about his bows, because it is flippin' Hawkeye after all. On the whole, Barton has shown that he tends towards recurve style bows that utilize the curve of the frame and the user's strength to propel the arrows forward. Though in Thor, he was seen using a compound bow, which relies less on the user's strength, as the complex pulley system negates some of the weight that is required for the draw. Barton's main bow has a few modifications to it that make it more than just a standard bow, including selector buttons on the grip that control parts of his fancy quiver on his back, which we'll get to in a moment, and can be converted into a bow staff with a simple motion, just in case things get real up close and personal. Oh, and it can be folded up for easy storage. That's always a nice feature. I wonder if it'll fit into an overhead bin like that. A moment ago, I mentioned his fancy quiver, which goes hand in hand with his modular arrows, with his quiver able to switch out different high-tech arrowheads on the fly, all controlled by those previously mentioned buttons on the bow. This grants him access to a considerable amount of different arrow types, including traditional ones of course, explosive tipped ones, grappling hooks, taser tipped ones, ones that can hack computers, and even ones that function as a flashbang for distracting enemies. His different arrows are largely where the bulk of his utility as a fighter comes in, but are not his only fancy toys. He also has a pair of melee-focused weapons, such as a baton that he used against Vision in Civil War, and a custom-made dagger that he used to try to kill Romanoff while he was under Loki's control. Man, he uses his up-close and personal weapons against his teammates a lot more than his enemies. Oh, and of course he has used guns here and there, though of course he tends to stick with the bow, because guns are just not very Hawkeye. They are also questionable at best when it comes to kids' toys. And all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, is why Hawkeye deserves his spot on the Avengers. Well, there you go, we have now taken a look at both members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Strike Team Delta. So of course we gotta ask, which of the two is your favorite? Let us know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Screen Rant for more videos about your favorite superheroes and villains. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.